What is going on, everybody? Today we have NFL Mock Draft 9.0 on the slate. We are really getting down to it. The NFL Draft starts this Thursday. That is only 3 days away. We are finally here at Draft Week, which is super exciting. In today's mock draft, we will be doing full 7 rounds, the entire draft. I usually do one of these per season, usually around a week or so before the draft. This year, a little bit closer to the draft. There will be no trades because that would just be a little bit too extreme. So 7 rounds, every pick, but no trades. I'm not going to go in depth over every pick. I'm going to try to keep this video not overly long. Obviously, it's going to be pretty long as we're having like 200 however many picks here. But I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker for each one, and I'm not going to talk over every day 3 pick, really the only ones that I find interesting or important. Let's take a quick look at the schedule I have planned for the rest of the week. So the original plan was to have this video up on Sunday, but instead it will be up on Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday, I have actually swapped those. So originally the big board was going to be tomorrow, and the what I would do mock would be on Wednesday, but I have switched those around. Thursday will still be mock draft 10.0, the final mock draft of the year, 1 round with trades, and then Sunday I will be listing out all of my draft grades for all 32 teams. So a lot of draft content this week. I hope you guys are excited, and let's get on to the mock draft itself now. Picks 1 and 2 have been engraved in Sharpie for a while. Trevor Lawrence to the Jags and Zach Wilson to the Jets. Those are not changing. Let's move on to pick 3 with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Ian Rappaport tweeted last night that the Niners are deciding between Mac Jones and Trey Lance. So you're probably thinking, why the hell do I have Justin Fields here? I believe the Mac Jones and Trey Lance thing is smoke. I think there is still a good chance the Niners do pick one of those 2 guys, but right now my gut is still telling me Justin Fields. The Niners have no reason to lie about this pick, though, since they probably know the 2 players going ahead of them. So that would make me lean towards one of the other guys, but my gut just tells me Justin Fields right now. I think there's a really solid chance it's Fields. I think there's also a really solid chance that it is Trey Lance. I still don't think it will be Mac Jones. I just don't buy that. I'll believe it when I see it. If it's not Fields, I think it would be Trey Lance. And I've just been back and forth on which one it's going to be. On Thursday, I might say it'll be Lance. On Thursday, I might say it'll be Fields. I really have no clue. I'm really swaying really 50-50 between Fields and Lance. Pick 4, Kyle Pitts to the Falcons. It seems like they're not going to pick a quarterback, and obviously since there's no trades, they cannot move back. There are rumors now surfacing today about possibly looking to trade Julio Jones sometime after the draft, specifically in June or July. That is just easier for the financial aspect. I believe if Atlanta stays, they won't pick a quarterback, although I believe they should. I would pick Trey Lance here. But if they don't do that, I think they have their choice out of all the best non-quarterbacks, and I think they do want to add another playmaker. Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase both really work out, but Kyle Pitts is an absolute unicorn, and I think it would be hard for Atlanta to pass up. Bengals at 5, I still have them going with Jamar Chase. I know offensive line is a really big need, but Penei Sewell does not fix their offensive line overnight, and adding a game-changing receiver in Jamar Chase could be really tough to pass up. I could see them picking Sewell, but right now my gut tells me it's Chase. At 6, this is another spot where it could be an offensive lineman, but for right now I have the Dolphins selecting Jalen Waddle, the wide receiver out of Alabama. I do think the Dolphins want a playmaker, and I think they're going to prioritize that over offensive line. So here I imagine it would be either Waddle or Devonta Smith. Smith seems to be slipping a little bit, so my best guess here, if Pitts and Chase are both off the board, then Waddle will be the pick to Miami. At pick 7, I think the game plan for Detroit really has to be the best player available. I think I've had the Lions getting Penei Sewell in 3 straight mock drafts, I want to say. I think there's a really good chance that we as in the Lions, I'm a Lions fan for those who don't know, I think there's a really good chance that we end up just going with one of the offensive tackles, Sewell or Rashawn Slater. There have been a lot of rumors buzzing that we may not pick a receiver and we may look at an offensive lineman or a trade down. I'm really fine with all of those options. There aren't a lot of scenarios for us to mess up, and I think we're in a really good spot here. If we do stay at 7, I think Penei Sewell is the right pick. He's the best player on the board, and in year 1 of a rebuild, with so many holes on the team, you really can't be focusing on need. More so, you got to focus on value, and there are some question marks on the right side of that Lions offensive line. So Penei Sewell does technically fit a need. I think he could start at right tackle. You move Vaitai over to right guard, and boom, that's one of the better offensive lines in the league. Panthers at 8, a little bit disappointed. Penei Sewell does not fall, but they get arguably the most NFL-ready offensive lineman in this class in the versatile Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. Obviously, I don't see them going quarterback really once they made the Sam Darnold trade. That was crossed off the list of possibilities. I could see them as a trade-down candidate, but again, since there's no trades, they're going to pick who they believe is the best player on the board, and I think that could be Slater. Do I expect Trey Lance to be on the board here at 9? No, I don't. But I don't think any of the teams picking between 4 and 8 will go with a quarterback. There's a chance somebody like Atlanta or Detroit possibly considers it, Carolina as well. But I don't think any of those 3 teams are going to pick a QB in the first round. I think someone would more likely move up for the 4th quarterback in this draft, whether that's Fields or Lance or Mac Jones. But with no trades, the quarterbacks do fall a little bit. I do believe that the Broncos, given this opportunity, would go ahead and take either Trey Lance or Mac Jones. I could see this being Jones here, but as of right now, my gut tells me it would be Lance. Cowboys at 10, not a challenging selection here. They go Patrick Surtain, cornerback Alabama. They need a corner really bad. Surtain has fallen into their laps, and they're going to run this card up to the podium. So not a ton of surprises here in the top 10, but now we really get interesting. So the Giants at 11, this is the same pick I gave them in my last mock. Elijah Vera-Tucker, the offensive lineman out of USC. We know Dave Gettleman likes the hog mollies. He likes to build inside the trenches. The Giants do need another guard, and I think Elijah Vera-Tucker could slide right in and play right guard. Another surprise pick at 12, the Eagles select Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker out of Notre Dame. Even with more obvious picks such as Devonta Smith, J.C. Horn, and Micah Parsons still on the board, I do think the Eagles could surprise some people. It wouldn't be the first time Howie Roseman made a surprise first-round pick, but unlike a lot of his other ones, I do think this would be a good choice. I do really like JOK. J.C. Horn of the Chargers at 13. I don't think they have to go offensive line. Christian Darrisaw is a really good option. He would be a great pick here, but they also do need help at corner. J.C. Horn is probably not projected to fall this far according to most, so the Chargers will gladly pick him up. And the Vikings have to be tickled pink that LA passed on Darrisaw, and they will pick him up. The Vikings have a hole at left tackle, and I think Christian Darrisaw is a really, really good prospect. Even though he's projected to go in the middle of the first round, I still feel like he's underrated by a lot of people, and I think he's a fringe top 10 talent in this entire draft class. So I think that's a smart pick for the Vikings. New England at 15 gets their quarterback, Mac Jones, out of Alabama. Do I think Mac will fall this far? No, I don't. I think there's a very high probability that he is picked in the top 14. But again, with no trades, he does fall this far. And I think given the opportunity, New England would pick him. I think they would prefer to trade up for a guy like Justin Fields or Trey Lance. I think that's a very realistic possibility come draft night. But since there's no trades, they have to stay at 15 and they'll get Mac. Another player I don't think will fall this far is wide receiver Devonta Smith out of Alabama. It seems like he's slipped a little bit with concerns of his weight. He tested in at 166 pounds last week. But I do think he would not fall past Arizona. There have been rumors that the Cardinals do want to trade up for a playmaker. I believe those rumors are true. I don't think there's smoke. Whether they actually go through with it is one thing, but I do believe Arizona's eyeing up one of the top 4 playmakers in the class, whether that's Pitts, Chase, Waddle, or Devonta Smith. And if the top 6 plays out like it does here, I could see Arizona trying to move up possibly anywhere between 7 and 10 to try to get Devonta Smith. Here, they get him at 16, so I'd say if this scenario happened in real life, Arizona would be pretty stoked. It's no secret that the Raiders front office does not know how to run a football team, but there are a lot of good options here at 17. It is pretty hard for them to mess up. With trading away Trent Brown in the offseason, they need a new right tackle. Boom, you pick up Tevin Jenkins here out of Oklahoma State. You plug him right into that right tackle spot, and boom, I think this would be a good move. Dolphins at 18 with one of the most polarizing picks in this draft, edge rusher Jalen Phillips out of the University of Miami. So he is staying in South Beach. Talent-wise, you can make the case that Phillips has a higher ceiling and more talent than any defensive player in this class, but obviously with the medical question marks, specifically his concussion history, he will fall here. I think there's a good shot he could go later than this, but I think it's going to be hard for the Dolphins to pass him up. Another polarizing player here in Micah Parsons going to the Washington football team. I have not seen Parsons mocked to the Washington football team very often, but if he falls this far, I wouldn't be surprised if they did this. Although Washington needs offense more than defense, they could use another linebacker. And with the talented Micah Parsons, another fringe top 10 talent, this will be a tough pick to pass up. Obviously, he has his character question marks, but when he's on the field, he's darn good. Bears at 20, I imagine they would like to draft an offensive player. You could look at offensive tackle, but I think the receiver board has played out pretty well here. I would pick Rashad Bateman in this scenario, but Elijah Moore works too. He's a very reliable slot receiver who could keep Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy employed for a little bit longer if he turns out to be a good player. Colts at 21 select Christian Barmore, interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. I'm really curious to see where Barmore ends up. Last week, there are a lot of rumors that he could go higher than expected. This week, there was something that came out yesterday that Barmore has some concerns and could go lower than expected. So I really don't know where he's going to end up. Personally, I think he's going to go a tad bit higher than people predict. I think right around here in this 21 range is where I project him to go. Titans at 22 get Greg Newsome, cornerback out of Northwestern. The Titans have lost a lot of pieces in this offseason. They could look at another route, possibly an offensive tackle, possibly a wide receiver. Rashad Bateman, again, would be a great pick here. But Greg Newsome had an awesome season last year. When healthy, he's really good. Speaking of Rashad Bateman, he goes to the Jets at 23. I understand that wide receiver isn't the biggest need on the Jets roster, but the value here with Bateman this far down the board is going to be really hard for them to pass up. You want to get Zach Wilson help, and you want to give him protection. I think this will be a great pick. Steelers at 24. It seems like Pittsburgh is still committed to winning now. I think they believe that they can go far with Big Ben at their quarterback position, and obviously with a need at running back. If they have their choice of all of the top running backs in this class, I think they'd be really excited with that opportunity. And if Najee Harris is on the board, I think it'll be very hard for them to pass him up. Another player whose stock is in question at the moment is Texas offensive tackle Sam Cosmi. I've seen mock drafts where he falls in the mid-second round. I've seen mock drafts where he goes in the top 15. I'm really not sure where he's going to end up. For a while, I actually have had him towards the middle of the second round, but the more I thought about it, I do think there is a really strong chance he goes in the first round. The Jaguars have to protect Trevor Lawrence at all costs, and Cosmi would be a nice pick. Kwity Paye probably will not fall this far, but the Cleveland Browns will gladly select him here. I think a lot of people believe Paye is the best edge rusher in this draft class, and here at 26, this is awesome value. Ravens at 27. Obviously, Baltimore now has 2 first-round picks thanks to the Orlando Brown trade, 27 and 31. So I believe that it does seem like the Ravens will try to sign their Orlando Brown replacement in free agency. I know they've been heavily linked to Alejandro Villanueva. So their other 2 big needs are edge rusher and wide receiver, and I think they're going to start with edge rusher. Obviously, the Ravens have a very long history of developing raw and athletic edge rushers into being really good players. Look at guys like Matt Judon and Zadarius Smith, late-round draft picks who have recently gotten big paydays. And I think there are a few players who fit that Ravens mold. Joe Tryon out of Washington, Jason Owe out of Penn State. The guy I would pick here is Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. I really like Ojulari. I believe he's a top 20 player in this class, but it seems like there's been a lot of buzz lately with Joe Tryon that he could go in the first round, and I could see Baltimore pulling the trigger on him here at 27. Pick 28, another surprise first-round pick. It's cornerback Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky. The Caleb Farley freefall will continue. Joseph is a player who I do think could slip into the first round. Not a lot of people are expecting it, but it really wouldn't surprise me. I think his stock around the league is higher than it is portrayed currently in the media. Packers at 29, they had a few new holes thanks to a puzzling offseason, and I had them going with linebacker Nick Bolton out of Missouri. A lot of different options the Packers could go here, but I think Nick Bolton would make some sense. probably not the linebacker I would pick here. I would pick Zaven Collins over him, but Nick Bolton's still a fine player. The Caleb Farley free fall will come to a close. I won't be surprised if he goes a lot earlier than this. I cannot see him falling past this area, and the Buffalo Bills will gladly pick him up. No doubt a top 10 talent in this class. And similar with Jalen Phillips, you could make an argument that Caleb Farley is the most talented defensive player in this entire draft class. But again, with the medical, with him, it's mainly the back issues. He did not participate at his pro day. Obviously, he's had a history injury at Virginia Tech. Did not play last year as a opt-out thanks to the pandemic. But Caleb Farley is a superb talent, and if not for the medical, he would probably be my highest-ranked corner, even higher than Patrick Surtain. Ravens at 31, so they've addressed edge. I believe they're going to sign an offensive tackle, so that means they're going to look at wide receiver. And I do believe the board has played out pretty well here with Terrace Marshall available. Had Marshall been gone, I think the Ravens probably would have looked at a different position. I don't think they want to reach down the board for a receiver. But with Terrace Marshall here, you go ahead and make that pick. I really like Terrace Marshall. I think he's a stud. Excellent pick here by the Ravens. And then at 32, Jason Oweh to the Bucs. I could see Tampa Bay really just trying to go all out on the next few years. Maybe pick a guy like Travis Etienne here. But the upside with Jason Oweh might be too hard for them to pass up here at 32. Okay, I know for a fact that Jaguars fans are going to hate this pick, but let me explain myself. The Jaguars want to help Trevor Lawrence by giving him offensive line help and weapons. And I think they want to make sure he's comfortable. So what better way of making him comfortable than giving him his college running back in Travis Etienne? I understand James Robinson had a really solid season last year. Obviously, he's an undrafted rookie out of nowhere. He was one of the best runners in the league. But the Jags don't have a ton of other talent in the backfield. You need multiple good running back in today's NFL. I understand that the Jags have a lot of needs, but I think having a receiving threat in the backfield like Travis Etienne might be too hard to pass up. And this is not replacing James Robinson. This is complementing James Robinson. I think a tandem of him and Travis Etienne would be a really lethal duo. So I think this pick actually would make sense for Jacksonville. Jets at 34, they let the board play out to them. Azeez Ojulari is definitely a first-round talent. There's a good chance he does go in the first round, but if not, the Jets are not going to complain. They will scoop him up right here. Javonte Williams going to the Falcons. It wouldn't totally surprise me if he snuck into the back end of the first round. Maybe a team like Miami or Atlanta or the Jets or somebody like that moves up for a running back, and it could be Williams. I think he's right in that discussion with Najee Harris and Travis Etienne for the best running back in the class. So the Dolphins get pretty unlucky here. They have Etienne and Javonte Williams go right before them, and there aren't really any other running backs worthy of being picked in this range. So they're going to go back to the defensive side of the ball and add some more talent there with Zaven Collins, the linebacker out of Tulsa. So 2 additions to the front 7. I understand the Dolphins need more on offense, but Brian Flores and Chris Greal might not be able to help themselves. Jalen Phillips and Zaven Collins would be 2 smart picks. Tyson Campbell going to the Eagles. They need corner. I understand they did not pick a wide receiver in the first round. Eagles fans are probably screaming their heads off. Why are you not picking a wide receiver here? Well, receiver is not the only need that the Eagles have. It's not like they have a good roster and just happen to need receivers. No, their roster is not good in general. I think the value here for a guy like Tyson Campbell is better than the value at wide receiver. And, of course, they do need corner as well. Dylan Ray-Dunes going to the Bengals here at 38. Again, they did not pick an offensive lineman in the first round, but this is a deep O-line class. They can always use their day 2 picks on offensive linemen. So pretty much the question is, would you rather, let's say, Jamar Chase and Dylan Ray-Dunes, or a guy like Penei Sewell and the next best receiver? I don't know who the next best outside receiver is here. I mean, Kadarius Toney is not a traditional outside guy. Neither is Rondale Moore. Would you look at Diami Brown, Nico Collins? I mean, this wide receiver class is not as deep as people give it credit for. It's very top-heavy, but really outside of the top 5 or 6, who all could go in the first round, there's not a true outside option for the Bengals to pick here. If they do want a slot gadget guy, then yeah, Kadarius Toney would be fine here. But I would probably prefer Jamar Chase and Dylan Ray-Dunes if I was the Bengals over Sewell and Toney or Sewell and Rondale Moore. Asante Samuel Jr. going to the Carolina Panthers. They do need help at corner. I think Asante Samuel Jr. is one of the more underrated players in this class. I think he's a really solid player, someone who arguably is first-round talent. I think this would be a nice pick for them. And then Jamin Davis here at 40. I know he's been mocked in the first round a lot, but it does seem like the media is a little bit higher on him than the league, and I could see him slip a little bit. I could see him go in the first round. That wouldn't totally surprise me, but he's on the board here at 40, and I think the Broncos would be happy to pick him up. Kadarius Toney going to the Lions here at 41. I don't know how I would feel about this. I'm not as high on Toney as others. I think this is around the range where he should go value-wise. I don't think he's a first-round player. If he was picked in the back end of the first round by, say, a team like the Packers or the Bills, someone who wants an extra playmaker, I wouldn't call it a total reach, but I think his value is more around this range. Personally, if the Lions pick a receiver, I would prefer a more traditional outside guy. Now, again, there aren't a ton of those types of players available. I would almost rather wait until the third round and hope that either Diami Brown or Nico Collins is still on the board. But I wouldn't be totally upset with this either. Kadarius Toney is a threat when he has the ball in his hands, and I would not be totally upset with this pick. Gregory Rousseau going to the Giants. Again, they want to build up the lines, get the hog mollies. Rousseau has been linked to the Giants in the past, at one point possibly at pick 11. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. But I could see a team like the Giants picking Rousseau here in the second round. Eric Stokes to San Francisco. This is a pairing I've had pretty often. If Stokes is on the board here, this would be a great pick. There's a good shot he's not on the board, but if he is, I think they'd be happy to pick him up. Alex Leatherwood to the Cowboys. They need to get a little bit younger on the O-line. Tyron Smith's not getting any younger, nor is he super healthy. And you can develop Leatherwood at tackle, or you can move him over to guard. Connor Williams really hasn't developed. Zach Martin is still an outstanding player, but he is on the wrong side of 30. So I do expect Dallas to look at offensive line pretty early. Trayvon Moehrig going to the Jags at 45. In my last mock, I had them getting him at 25. So value-wise, an outstanding selection here for the Jags. I think he's a first-round talent. Javon Holland going to New England. I had the Patriots getting Javon Holland in the third round. I had them moving up, I think, to like pick 81 and end up getting Holland. But the more I think about it, the more I don't think he will fall that far. But I do think Javon Holland in the New England defense will be a really fun and intriguing fit. Holland is a very versatile player, and I think Bill Belichick would really enjoy having him. Liam Eichenberg going to the Chargers. I could see him going a lot earlier than this, but he falls in the second round. Chargers will be happy to pick him up. You can plug him right in at left tackle. Boom, great pick. Levi Onwuzurike, interior defensive lineman out of Washington, going to the Raiders. Another really solid pick here, in my opinion. The Raiders so far have not made bad selections yet. Do I think this will be the case in real life? I wouldn't trust Gruden or Mayock at the moment, but so far, Tevin Jenkins and Levi Onwuzurike is a pretty solid draft for them. Arguably the biggest need on the Cardinals roster is corner. They did not address corner in the first round, adding Devonta Smith, but this is a deep cornerback class. I think they can afford to wait until day 2. They'd be happy to pick up a guy like Ifeatu Melifonwu here at 49. Creed Humphrey going to the Dolphins. This is a steal. I really like Creed Humphrey. I think he's arguably a top 20 talent in this class. I think there's a good shot he goes a lot earlier than this. I could see him going in the first round, but based on how the board plays out, he falls a little bit farther than he should, but Miami Dolphins will be happy to pick him up. Kellen Mond, quarterback, Texas A&M to the Washington football team. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not your future. Taylor Heineke, I'm sorry, he is not your future, and neither is Kyle Allen. I think there's a good shot Kellen Mond or Davis Mills. I think at least one of those guys will be picked in the second round, and I could see a team like Washington really pulling the trigger on one of them. Walker Little, offensive tackle out of Stanford. Who the hell knows where he's going to go? He could go early second. He could go in the middle of day 3. I really have no clue where Walker Little's going to end up because he's very polarizing and intriguing. But again, what do the Bears have to lose? Or I guess specifically Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, other than their jobs, nothing. So, with those two guys being on the hot seat, I think they're going to possibly take some swings for the fences, and Walker Little is exactly that, a swing for the fence. Once a projected top 5 or 10 pick, he has barely played the past 2 seasons, but I think it would be hard for them to pass him up. Nico Collins going to the Titans. This is an awesome pick. I've been on the Nico Collins bandwagon for months now, and I've had Nico Collins going to the Titans in the second round a lot. I think this makes a ton of sense. I think he'd be a perfect replacement for Corey Davis, and I think he's one of the most underrated players in the class. Brady Christensen, offensive tackle, BYU to the Colts. He had an outstanding pro day. The age with him is a concern. I believe he turns 25 during his rookie season, but he is a really solid player, and I think the Colts will be happy to add him to their squad. Quinn Miners, interior offensive lineman out of Wisconsin Whitewater, going to the Steelers. They have a big hole at center of Marquise Pouncey out the door. They could possibly look at guard as well. Miners can play both. I predict he would probably play center for this team, but you could slide him over to guard if he goes to a team that does not need a center. And then Ronnie Perkins going to Seattle. I think Perkins is a possible first-round sleeper, but kind of how the board plays out, the edge rushers go lower than expected. Some guys fell a little bit, such as Ronnie Perkins, and Seattle actually does not take a swing and a miss with their first pick, unlike normal. Wyatt Davis, guard out of Ohio State to the Rams. I think they need to improve a little bit on the offensive line. Davis has some medical concerns, but when healthy, he's really good. Baron Brown, and linebacker, Ohio State to the Chiefs. He's a little bit raw, but he has a lot of upside, and I'm really curious to see what his stock ends up being because he's another guy who could really go in a wide range of area. The Chiefs do need help at linebacker, and I think this will be a nice pick for them. They did get this selection, of course, in the Orlando Brown trade. Milton Williams, interior defensive lineman out of Louisiana Tech to the Browns. This is another player who I could see possibly being a first-round sleeper, but again, with how the interior defensive line class has fallen, he's gone a little bit later than expected, but he's a major sleeper of mine to go quite high. Very, very athletic player, and the Browns have really lucked into two great selections to start this draft. Divine Diablo, safety, Virginia Tech to the Saints. His stock has really risen as of recently. He's gained a lot of steam these past few weeks. Davion Nixon, interior defensive lineman out of Iowa to the Bills. Ed Oliver still has potential. He hasn't really worked out yet, but I do think they're going to want to pair Oliver up with a sidekick. I think Davion Nixon could be just that. Stone Forsythe, tackle, Florida to the Packers. Another guy who's really risen up boards as of recently at a strong pro day. I could see him going in the top 64 picks. Rondale Moore, wide receiver, Purdue to the Chiefs. I think it's going to be hard for Kansas City to pass up a guy like Rondale Moore here. I mean, imagine him on this offense. I understand they already have small, fast players like Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman, but the scary team gets scarier. Imagine an offense with Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, and Rondale Moore all in the same receiving corps. Not to mention, they have the best quarterback and tight end in football. Spencer Brown, tackle, Northern Iowa to the Bucks. Another player who has a lot of upside. So Tampa Bay is really going for potential here. I could see them just going for high floor win now players. Travis Etienne in round 1. Maybe a guy like Carlos Basham here at 64. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. But the potential of Jason Owe at 32 and now Spencer Brown at 64 is going to be really hard for them to pass up. Pat Freiermuth is falling a little bit. He goes here at 65 to the Jags. I've had him go to Jacksonville a lot, but not here. Usually in the second round, I think once or twice I might have even had him at 25 going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now they get him at 65. I think he has a lot of potential. He's a little bit raw, but I think he could be the tight end of the future. Get your quarterback a safety weapon. Paulson Adebo, cornerback, Stanford to the Jets. He was projected to go in the first round a year ago, but stayed in school, then opted out. I really liked Paulson Adebo coming out of Stanford last year. Even before he decided to return to school, he was still definitely on my radar, and I think he should go earlier than this. I think he's really good. Landon Dickerson's a really interesting player here, and I really like the fit with the Houston Texans. I'm going to explain why. The Texans need a new identity. It seems like they are tearing everything down, as they pretty much should. Deshaun Watson's future with the team is very much in question, obviously with his serious allegations and his trade request. So the Texans, I feel like, are just going to have to start fresh, and obviously they're going to need new leadership. Landon Dickerson was exactly that at Alabama. He's a high-character leader. I think he can really help lead a locker room, or at least help lead a locker room. He won't be the main leader as a rookie. But Landon Dickerson's stock and his medical are in question at the moment. It seems like a lot of people have slipped him the past few days. The medical concerns have been quite apparent. He tore his ACL late in the season. And it seems like people are really starting to get concerned now, not only about that injury, but about his injury history in general. So I could see him going later than this. But a team like the Texans, who needs to start fresh with a new identity, I think they'd really like a guy like Landon Dickerson. Peyton Turner going to the Falcons, solid edge rusher here out of Houston. They need more bodies going after the quarterback. At 69, nice. The Bengals get Josh Myers out of Ohio State. Myers is primarily a center. I think you can move him or Trey Hopkins over to guard. Tylan Wallace at 70. The Eagles finally pick a wide receiver. I think in this range, Tylan Wallace would be solid value. James Hudson, tackle, Cincinnati to the Denver Broncos. He's a really solid player. I think Denver would like to improve the offensive line a little bit. Jawan James hasn't really worked out. They invested a lot of money into him, and he has not been on the field a ton. Osa Odighizuwa of the Lions. I would love this pick here at 72. In my last mock, I had the Lions getting him at 101, which would be even more awesome. But I'd still be super stoked about this pick. I really like Osa Odighizuwa. I think he's really, really good. And this would be a really solid selection for the Lions, a team who needs a lot of help on the defensive line. For a while, it would seem like Brevin Jordan out of Miami was going to be the third tight end off the board, but after a poor pro day performance, his stock has sort of slipped, and Tommy Tremble's has risen. I think he could go earlier than people expect, but I had them here at 73 to the Carolina Panthers, a team who could use a tight end. Jamar Johnson out of Indiana. This is a name who's really risen up boards lately. Washington still needs help on defense. They don't have a ton of holes there. Cameron Corral had a really good season, but they could use another safety. Landon Collins is more of a box hybrid type of player, so I think adding Johnson and Parsons to the defense would be really solid. Tommy Togiai going to Dallas. I think he's another sleeper who could go early than expected, but Dallas does need help on the interior of the defensive line. I think this would be a really strong pick for them if he falls this far. Elijah Molden, he has gotten some late first-round buzz. He is not one of my sleepers to go early. I don't think he will be a late first, early second-round guy. I think the earliest we see him is maybe the middle or the late part of the second round. He just didn't test well enough at his pro day. I think he's more of a nickel cornerback anyway. But maybe the Giants could develop him to be an outside guy, possibly. Joseph Osai going to the Chargers. I think they should possibly look to add an edge rusher with Melvin Ingram not back on the team. Kendrick Green, guard, Illinois to the Vikings. I've had this pairing quite often. Minnesota using their first two picks to help the offensive line with Christian Darrisaw earlier, and now Green. Raiders with back-to-back picks, and again, two pretty good selections for them, which is kind of rare. Richie Grant, safety, UCF, and linebacker Jabril Cox, LSU. Richie Grant's a really solid player. A lot of people think he's going to be the second or third safety off the board. Here he slipped a little bit with guys like Divine Diablo and Jamar Johnson going ahead of him, but I think this will be good value. And then Jabril Cox, once a player who I had mocked in the first round. I think I just kind of overrated his stock at one point, and I think he's a good day two linebacker. I do really like him, and I think at 80, this is great value, but I don't think he's going to go as high as I thought he would, say, a month ago. At 81, the Dolphins pick up Trey Sermon. They were unable to land a running back in the second round, so they're going to wait a little bit longer now in the third round. I think this is adequate time to look at a guy like Sermon or Michael Carter or Kenneth Gainwell. Here I think it's Sermon. Trey Sermon is not necessarily an elite receiver, and I don't think he'll be a great back in the NFL, but I do think he could be a solid early down guy. Diami Brown, what a steal here, going to the Washington football team at 82. This is a great pick for them. Diami Brown was one of my sleepers, and then it seemed like everybody kind of hopped on the bandwagon, so I can't really call him one of my sleepers anymore, but I think he's really, really good. This would be an awesome pick. Davis Mills out of Stanford, the quarterback, going to the Chicago Bears. They claim Andy Dalton is their guy. They really don't have a better option this year, but Andy Dalton's not the future long-term quarterback of the Chicago Bears, so I think possibly adding a guy like Davis Mills would be a lot of sense, and I think it could certainly happen. Trey Smith, guard, Tennessee to the Eagles. He has some medical question marks, but when healthy, he's really, really talented. I think value-wise and talent-wise, he should not be on the board here at 84. This is great value. Deontay Smith, tackle, East Carolina, the Titans. They let go of right tackle Dennis Kelly, who really developed into a solid player and solid replacement for Jack Conklin, but they could not hold on to him, and they need to look to replace him. They were unable to get a tackle in the first two rounds, so they'll settle with Deontay Smith here. Michael Carter going to the New York Jets. I think this is a solid pick. Carter and Trey Sermon are two different types of players, but I think they're really solid. As I mentioned about Sermon, he's more of an early down back, whereas Carter, I think, is best in a complementary role. He is much more of a receiving threat out of the backfield, and I think this will be a nice pick for the Jets. Cornerback Aaron Robinson out of UCF to the Steelers. He probably should not fall this far, but the Steelers are not going to complain. They need a new nickel corner with Mike Hilton now with Cincinnati. And another player who should not fall this far is Carlos Basham out of Wake Forest, a very high floor player. I think this would be a steal here at 88 for the LA Rams. If he's on the board here, they have to run the card up and make this pick. I think the Browns would like to add another playmaker. Obviously, Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry are both quite solid. I really like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I do think they might want to add another guy. Amari Rodgers is a really high floor player. Again, he's one of the older players in this draft class, but he's competitive, he's tough, and I think he's a really good option out of the slot. Chaz Surratt, linebacker, North Carolina, going to the Minnesota Vikings. They do need to improve the linebacking core. Eric Wilson signed with the Eagles this offseason, and I think Surratt will be a solid pick here. Tay Gowan, cornerback, UCF, going to the Browns, a really intriguing player. Opted out this past season, but I think he has a lot of upside, and I think he could be a really solid pro. Dwayne Eskridge, wide receiver, Western Michigan to the Packers. I know a lot of people like Eskridge. I'm not as high on him as some people, but I do think he is a solid player, and here at 92, I think this is pretty good value. I would consider him probably a top 100 player in this class. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC to the Bills. Great value selection. They need to look at more help on the receiving core with John Brown gone. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown would be a nice selection. They did sign Emmanuel Sanders, but he's not getting any younger. And Cole Beasley's not getting any younger either. Both of those guys can play in the inside, so can Amon-Ra St. Brown. So St. Brown may not make a gigantic impact year one, but maybe you could have a long-term receiving core of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis on the outside and Amon-Ra St. Brown on the inside. That's pretty fun. Tyree Gillespie, safety, Missouri, going to the Ravens. They need to improve the back end of the secondary a little bit. I like Deshaun Elliott. I think Chuck Clark is fine as well, but Gillespie will be a pretty good pick here. Then Kenneth Gainwell, running back, Memphis to the Bucks. In my last mock, I had Tampa Bay trading down from 32 to 48, and they picked Gainwell at 48. Now, pretty much half the picks later, Gainwell is still on the board, and I think Tampa Bay would be very happy to make this selection. Has experience at running back and slot receiver. I think he would make a lot of sense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sometime on day 2. Usually, these would be the final 10 picks of the day if we were doing 3 rounds, but obviously we're not. This is a 7-round mock draft, so we have a lot more picks after this. 96, Monty Rice, linebacker, Georgia to New England. Really good cover linebacker. I think he'd fit right in. And I think Bill Belichick still wants to mainly focus on defense in this draft if he can. Emir Smith-Marset, wide receiver, Iowa to the Chargers. He's a guy who's going to go higher than people think. He's a really, really talented player, has some character concerns, but when on the field, he's real good. Janarius Robinson, edge rusher, Florida State to the Saints. I think they would like to add some more pass rush. Trey Hendrickson is now a Bengal, and I think Robinson will be a fine choice. Ellerson Smith, edge rusher, Northern Iowa to the Cowboys. 2 Northern Iowa players in the top 100. How about that? I think Smith is a really solid player, has a lot of potential. I think this would be a nice pick. Brevin Jordan, the Titans at 100. Man, I love this pick for Tennessee. He's a player who compares pretty similarly skill set-wise to Jonnu Smith. So if you can develop Jordan, possibly have him around the talent level where Jonnu Smith was, this would be a steal. Robert Rochelle, cornerback, Central Arkansas to the Lions. This is a player who I've just introduced myself with, but the more I research and learn about him, he seems like a guy who the Lions could consider on day 2. A versatile defensive back who can provide a lot of different things. The Rams had a history in recent years of picking versatile defensive backs on day 2. Look at guys like John Johnson, Taylor Rapp. Obviously, our new GM is coming over from the Rams and Brad Holmes, so I could see some similar draft tendencies that the Rams had carried over to Detroit. Adekumbo Ogundeji, edge rusher out of Notre Dame to the 49ers. I think they would like to add some more pass rushing help, and Ogundeji would be a solid pick. Robert Hainsey, tackle, Notre Dame to the Rams. We know Notre Dame definitely knows how to develop their offensive linemen, and I think Hainsey would be a solid choice. Hunter Long, tight end, Boston College to the Ravens. They love their 2 tight end sets. Get Mark Andrews a partner in crime. And then Cade Johnson, wide receiver out of South Dakota State, going to the New Orleans Saints. I think he can be a good replacement for Emmanuel Sanders out of the slot, and I think that'd be a nice pick for them. So now that we are on to the day 3 picks, there are probably close to around 150, but we just do not have time to cover them all, so I'm really going to lean to go over the ones that I feel like need to be discussed. Benjamin St-Juste to the Jags at 106. Hamza Nasir-Ladin to the Jets at 107. I really like that pick for them. I think Hamza Nasir-Ladin is a really big sleeper. I've been on the Nasir-Ladin train for the longest time. I think he has a really good shot to be a great NFL player. Jalen Mayfield slips. He goes here in the early 4th to the Atlanta Falcons. At one point, he looked like a almost sure thing to go in the first round. Seems like his stock has dipped. Maybe he doesn't fall this far, but I could see him going later than people expect. Demador Lenoir, cornerback out of Oregon, to the Texans. Cam McGrone of the Browns at 110. Elijah Griffin to the Bengals at 111. Lions at 112 get Pete Werner, linebacker, Ohio State. And the Panthers at 113. High risk, high reward here with Andre Sisco, a player who has a lot of potential. Still some work to do, but I think Carolina is a good place for him to develop. Another guy who once looked like a sure thing to go in the first round was Jay Tufele. Again, he could go a lot earlier than this, but I do have him falling here to the 4th round. Denver will be happy to scoop him up. Ben Cleveland, guard out of Georgia, to Dallas. Josh Palmer, wide receiver, to the Giants. Niners get Jalen Darden, wide receiver out of Texas. Both Palmer and Darden are 2 big sleepers of mine. I think they're both really solid. Kenny Yeboah, tight end, Ole Miss, to the Chargers. Vikings get Cornell Powell, wide receiver out of Clemson, another really solid pick. The 3 receivers on this slide are really, really talented, all probably top 100 players in my opinion. Kene Nwangu, I hope I said that right, running back out of Iowa State. He was not the main running back they had last year. Obviously, that was Breece Hall, who's probably going to be a 1st or 2nd round pick next year. But Nwangu has a lot of potential. He's super athletic. And in the 4th round, why not take a shot if you're New England? So he's a player who really intrigues me. And then Trey Hill, the center out of Georgia, going to the Las Vegas Raiders. And at 122 gets Frank Darby, wide receiver, Arizona State. Kyle Trask at quarterback, Florida, going to the Eagles at 123. This is an interesting one. I think the Eagles will look to possibly add another quarterback. They do need a backup. Joe Flacco ain't really it, and I do not imagine they are sold on Jalen Hurts going forward. I think they want to get someone to at least push him for the starting job. Do I think Kyle Trask would be a major threat to win the starting position? No. Not really. Jalen Hurts is a better football player, and Jalen Hurts should get that starting job pretty easily, but I do think they would consider adding another quarterback, and the Eagles' new QB coach, Brian Johnson, was the offensive coordinator at Florida last year, so keep that in mind. Jackson Carman, offensive lineman, Clemson, the Washington football team. Pro Wells, tight end out of TCU to the Vikings. Not a name who a lot of people are talking about, but I really like him. Has a strong basketball background. I think he'd be a great pick here in the 4th round. DeMar Hamlin, safety out of Pittsburgh, going to the Titans. Israel Mukwamu, cornerback, South Carolina, the Colts. He's a lot of upside. He's tall, he's long, he's lean. I think this will be a good pick for them in this range. Josh Ball, offensive tackle out of Marshall to the Steelers. And Seattle at 129 gets Marvin Wilson, a really interesting player. Once a super highly touted recruit and a potential top 10 pick. But his play just is not matched up. I do think he'll be getting drafted this year, but not as high as he was once supposed to. Jacksonville at 130 adds the big interior defensive lineman out of Texas A&M in Bobby Brown III. Ravens at 131. This is an interesting pick. They get Tamarian Terry, wide receiver out of Florida State. Terry's collegiate career is a little bit up and down, but we know the talent is there when he's on the field and when he is consistent. So I think he's a guy who could go in the 4th or 5th round and have a better career than people expect. Dylan Moses, linebacker, Alabama to the Cleveland Browns. I've had this pairing a few times. I think Dylan Moses here would make a lot of sense. Another former 5-star recruit who looked like a top 10 pick, but after some medical question marks and after really not playing all that well this year, he slips a little bit into the 4th round. Alan McNeil, interior defensive lineman out of NC State to the Saints. Vikings get Tyler Shelvin, another interior defensive lineman out of LSU. And the Packers, with another interior defensive lineman, that's 3 in a row. They get Marlon Tuipulotu out of USC. All 3 of those guys who I just named are really solid value picks. They are constantly being mocked in day 2. I have them going early day 3. I think this is a solid value for all 3 of them, McNeil, Shelvin, and Tuipulotu. Dan Moore Jr., offensive tackle, Texas A&M, going to the Ravens. And the Bucs adding the speedy wideout out of Auburn in Anthony Schwartz. Really interesting player, super fast. We'll see if he develops into anything at the next level. We are now on to the compensatory picks here in the 4th round. There are 12 comp picks in round 4 before we move on to the 5th round. Dallas at 138 gets Shaun Wade, cornerback, Ohio State. He would have been a first-round pick probably last year, decided to stay in school, and that ended up costing him. He did not play well on the outside. I think he has a chance to be a good nickel cornerback, and I think a lot of people are taking too much into account of this year because he was an outstanding nickel corner in the past. So if you play him in the nickel, I think he could be a strong player in the NFL. Quincy Roche, edge rusher, Miami to New England. Pretty good value there at 139. Jamie Newman, quarterback, Georgia to the Steelers. He's a polarizing player. I know some scouts think he's a sleeper. Some scouts wouldn't even pick him. At this point in the draft, with the Steelers not having their franchise quarterback on the roster, why not take a risk and get a guy like Jamie Newman? Trey Brown, cornerback, Oklahoma to the Rams. Packers at 142 get guard Aaron Banks. Minnesota at 143 gets Victor Dimukeje, the edge rusher out of Duke. And the Chiefs at 144 get the big, mauling guard out of Alabama in Deontay Brown. I think I just said there were 12 comp picks in round 4. I might have mixed that one up with one of the other rounds. There were only 7 compensatory picks in the 4th round, and those were the 7 that we just talked about. So we are now into the 5th round. Starting at 145, Shi Smith, wide receiver, South Carolina, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Shi Smith's an interesting player. I do like him. I think he's solid value here. David Moore, guard, Grambling State to the Jets. To Darrell Slayton, interior defensive lineman out of Florida, going to the Texans. True Williams, cornerback, Syracuse to Atlanta. The Bengals adding another guard and Tommy Kramer out of Notre Dame. The Eagles at 150 get Kylan Granson, tight end, SMU. Charles Snowden, linebacker, Virginia, going to the Panthers at 151. And at pick 152, the Denver Broncos get Keith Taylor Jr., solid cornerback prospect out of the University of Washington. A lot of interesting picks here on this slide, starting with the Lions at 153, their final pick of the day. They get wide receiver Dez Fitzpatrick out of Louisville. Overall, I'd be pretty happy with this draft for the Lions. I would like to trade down at some point, but if we don't make any trades, I would be happy if this was the outcome. Brendan Jamies, offensive tackle, Nebraska to the Jets. Niners at 155 get Jermar Jefferson, running back, Oregon State. I think this is a really interesting pick. The Niners love to have multiple talented running backs, and I think Jermar Jefferson will be a really solid fit here. Khalil Herbert, running back, Virginia Tech to the Dolphins. So Miami adds 2 running backs. They picked Trey Sermon, I think with their last pick at 81. I don't think the Dolphins have had a day 3 pick yet until here, in which they add Khalil Herbert. So doubling down on running back, hoping that one of these guys pans out. Marco Wilson, cornerback, Florida to the Minnesota Vikings, a very high upside player. He was the guy who threw the shoe in the LSU game and prompted them not only to lose, but also pretty much killed their national championship hopes. But he does have a lot of potential. Maybe he ends up better than his brother Quincy Wilson was. Trey McKitty, tight end, Georgia to the Texans. Drake Jackson, interior offensive lineman out of Kentucky to the Chargers. And the Cardinals at 160 get Derek Barnes, the linebacker out of Purdue. Kylan Hill to the Bills is really interesting, and I really like this pick. At one point in the draft season, like probably October or November, there were legitimate discussions of Kylan Hill being the first running back off the board due to his strong play at Mississippi State. Obviously, he had to deal with a massive scheme change with Mike Leach coming in. You know that they're going to throw the ball a ton. And obviously, as for running back, you'd think that would not bode well for Kylan Hill, but he made a lot of really solid plays as a receiver, and there was legitimate first-round buzz around him, but then he opted out, and then it seems like the buzz is really tailored off. I think this is great value at 161. I think the first-round buzz was always kind of unreasonable, now that I think about it, but I think he should go earlier than this. I think he's really talented. Thomas Graham Jr., cornerback, Oregon of the Raiders. Rodarius Williams, cornerback, Oklahoma State of the Washington football team. Bears get Darius Stills, interior defensive lineman out of West Virginia. Darius Washington, safety, TCU to the Colts. He's another really high upside player. I like this pick a lot here in the 5th round. Seth Williams, wide receiver, Auburn to the Titans. Another interesting pick. Seth Williams, a really intriguing player. Felipe Franks, quarterback, Arkansas to the Raiders. He has a big arm, comes from a baseball background, and he's an interesting player. I do think Felipe Franks should be drafted. He was never always consistent at Florida and Arkansas, but I think based on his measurables and physical upside alone, he should be at least drafted sometime on day 3. And then Richard LeCount III, safety out of Georgia, going to the Minnesota Vikings here at 168. Browns at 169, nice. They select Alaric Jackson, offensive tackle out of Iowa. Jacksonville at 170, they pick Hamilcar Rashed Jr., edge rusher out of Oregon State. Both Alaric Jackson and Hamilcar Rashed were both pretty pumped up at one point. It seemed like they had possible day 2 buzz, but they fall here to day 3. Cameron Sample, edge rusher out of Tulane to the Ravens. James Wiggins, safety, Cincinnati to the Niners. Packers at 173 get Jacoby Stevens, safety out of LSU. Jordan Smith, edge rusher to the Bills at 174. Malcolm Kuntz, edge rusher, Buffalo to the Kansas City Chiefs. I really like Malcolm Kuntz. I think he's a really, really good player. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he went a lot earlier than this. And then Kyrios Tunga, interior defensive lineman out of BYU, going to the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at 176. 8 comp picks in the 5th, starting with New England. They get Ambry Thomas, cornerback, Michigan. Green Bay at 178, they pick tight end Noah Gray out of Duke. Tuf Borland, linebacker, Ohio State to Dallas. The Niners get Cole Van Lanen, offensive tackle. Chiefs get Kerry Angeline, tight end. The Falcons with back-to-back picks here at 182. They get KJ Costello, quarterback out of Mississippi State. I think there is a solid chance Atlanta takes a shot on a quarterback on day 2 or 3. KJ Costello, once a former Stanford player, transferred to Mississippi State. Really intriguing guy. I think he is worthy of being drafted. Justin Hilliard, linebacker, Ohio State, obviously also going to the Falcons. And then the Ravens finish up the 5th round by selecting cornerback Kerry Vincent Jr. out of LSU. Now on to round 6, only 2 more rounds left to go. The Chargers at 185 get Ramondre Stevenson, running back, Oklahoma. Puka Williams, running back, Kansas to the Jets. Puka Williams is a really interesting player, was really talented at Kansas, went on the field. I'm curious to see what his NFL career looks like. Caden Stearns, safety, Texas to the Atlanta Falcons. Once a highly regarded recruit and possible first-round pick. He just never really got consistent, never really built it off his great freshman year. Still think he should get drafted, but certainly not as high as it once looked like it could have. Jalen Twyman, interior defensive lineman out of Pittsburgh, going to New England at 188. This is an interesting pick. Physically, there are some comparisons that have been given with Aaron Donald, both undersized defensive tackles, both happening to come out of Pittsburgh. Do I think Jalen Twyman is anywhere near the player Aaron Donald is? No, I don't. But here at 188, this is good value. I think he could be a solid NFL player, but not Aaron Donald caliber. Jamie Sherwood, safety, Auburn to the Eagles at 189. At 190, Zach Davidson, tight end out of Central Missouri, going to the Bengals. Jarrett Patterson, running back, Buffalo. I really like this kid, going at 191 to the Broncos. Really similar player to Devin Singletary. I could see him going earlier than this. Had some great stretches this season at Buffalo. I mean, there were some games this year where he was just absolutely outstanding. Really, really good value here. And then Sam Ehlinger, the Texas quarterback, staying in the Lone Star State. He joins the Dallas Cowboys. The storybook, I guess, career for Sam Ehlinger kind of continues. Was a Texas kid in high school, hometown for the Longhorns, and sticks in the state of Texas, going to Dallas. Moving right along here, we got Jack Anderson, interior offensive lineman out of Texas Tech, going to Carolina. Linebacker Nick Neiman to San Francisco. Edge rusher Dalen Hayes to the Texans. Edge rusher Shaka Toney to the Giants. New England at 197 gets Josh Imatorbhebhe, wide receiver out of Illinois. A freak athlete. I mean, just based on his measurables alone, he is absolutely worth a shot here in this range. Brady Breeze, safety, Oregon to the Chargers. The infamous Tom Brady selection, 199. It belongs to the Vikings, and they select Sedarius Hutchinson, interior offensive lineman out of South Carolina. And then at 200, the Raiders get running back C.J. Marable from Coastal Carolina. Giants at 201 get Tony Fields II, cornerback, West Virginia. 202, Shane Buechele, quarterback, SMU to the Bengals, adding another quarterback to the depth chart. Obviously, the Ryan Finley pick never really worked out. Tutu Atwell, wide receiver, Louisville to the Texans. This is an interesting one. I once had Atwell as a possible 2nd or 3rd round pick, and I really have no clue where his stock is going to end up. He did measure in at 5'8", 149. He is tiny. Have there been tiny players like that who have succeeded at the NFL level? Yes, there absolutely have, but that size is just a major concern. I think he should go a little bit earlier than this, but I could see him taking a nosedive. Rashad Wild Goose Jr., cornerback out of Wisconsin. That is an awesome name, by the way. Going to the Chicago Bears. Jordan Scott, interior defensive lineman out of Oregon, going to the Titans. Colts had another weapon with UAB's Austin Watkins. Lorenzo Neal, the son of the all-time great fullback, Lorenzo Neal. His son is an interior defensive lineman out of Purdue, going here to the Chiefs at 207. And Chuba Hubbard, running back, Oklahoma State, to the Chicago Bears. Once looked at during the preseason as possibly the best running back in this class. Didn't play as well this year, and his stock certainly dipped. Probably could go earlier than this, but I have him falling really down the board here to 208. Good value by Chicago. Rams at 209 get Adrian Ely, tackle out of Oklahoma. 210, Drew Dahlman, interior offensive lineman out of Stanford, going to the Ravens. Joshua Bledsoe, safety, Mizzou, to the Browns. Patrick Jones, the second, edge rusher, Pittsburgh, to the Texans. He could go earlier than this. Really explosive and interesting player. I really wonder where his stock will end up being. Nick Eubanks, tight end, to the Bills. Sherman John Charles, cornerback out of Appalachian State, another awesome name. He is going to the Packers. Joshua Kaindo, edge rusher out of Florida State, to the Titans. And the Steelers at 216 with a good value selection here. And Deo Odenigbo, an edge rusher out of Vanderbilt. 12 compensatory picks here in the 6th round. There are none in the 7th round, keep in mind, but there are 12 here. 6 on this slide, 6 on the next one. Starting at 217, the Bucs get interior offensive lineman Robert Jones out of Middle Tennessee State. Linebacker Isaiah McDuffie to the Saints. Talanoa Hufanga, safety, USC, to Atlanta. Demetric Felton, wide receiver, running back hybrid out of UCLA, to the Green Bay Packers. Felton looks like a possible day 2 pick. His stock dipped a little bit after a poor pro day performance. John Bates, tight end, to the Bears. And Larry Roundtree, the third, running back, Missouri, to the Carolina Panthers at 222. The final 6 selections here in the 6th round. Starting with the Cardinals at 223, they get Josh Sills, interior offensive lineman out of Oklahoma State. The Eagles at 224 get Alex Polzazecki. I know I butchered that. Offensive tackle out of Illinois. Chris Evans, running back, Michigan, also goes to the Eagles. They have back-to-back picks here. Dax Milline, wide receiver, BYU, to the Jets. So getting Zach Wilson, a guy he's familiar with. Will Dax Milline be a core player on this team? No, probably not. But it's always good to get Zach Wilson, a guy he's comfortable with, someone he's used to throwing the ball to already. Daz Newsome, wide receiver, North Carolina, to Dallas. And the final pick of the 6th round, Chauncey Golston, edge rusher out of Iowa. So that will do it for round 6. One more round to go, and then that'll do it for the 7-round mock draft. On to the 7th and final round of the day. Only 31 picks. There are no comp selections, and the Vikings 7th rounder was forfeited after some salary cap issue of a practice squad player a few years back. 229, the Saints get Tommy Doyle, offensive tackle out of Miami of Ohio. Samuel Cooper, interior offensive lineman from Merrimack, going to the Niners. Derek Forrest, safety, to the Dolphins. Ian Book, quarterback, Notre Dame, to the Tennessee Titans. Will Book challenge Tannehill for the starting job? No, he will not, but I could see the Titans wanting to take a shot here on a guy like Book. KJ Britt, linebacker, Auburn, to the Texans. Racy McMath, wide receiver, LSU, to the Eagles, another really fun name. Chris Rump, the second, edge rusher, Duke, to the Bengals. I could see him going a lot earlier than this. Great value here in the 7th for Cincinnati. And then Christian Uphoff, a safety from Illinois State, going to the Buffalo Bills. Broncos at 237 get Teron Jackson, edge rusher, Coastal Carolina. Azahari Crosswell, safety, Arizona State, to Dallas. Simi Fehoko, wide receiver, to the Broncos. Mustafa Johnson, interior defensive lineman, to the Eagles. Patty Fisher, linebacker, Northwestern, to the Chargers. Another guy who was projected to go high a few years back, but medical and inconsistent play have pushed him down the board a little bit. Jalen Moore, offensive tackle, Western Michigan, to the Patriots. Luke Farrell, tight end, Ohio State, to Arizona. And at 244, the Washington football team selects running back Javian Hawkins out of Louisville. Trayvon Grimes, wide receiver, Florida, to the Steelers. This is strong value for him at 245. I think he's a pretty good player. Aubrey Solomon, interior defensive lineman out of Tennessee, to the Washington football team. Cardinals get Rakeem Boyd, running back, Arkansas. Rashawn Weaver, edge rusher, to the Colts. Marlon Williams, wide receiver, to Jacksonville. Whoop Philor, wide receiver, Indiana, to the Seahawks. Nick Pickett, safety, Oregon, to the Bucks. And then Bryce Hargrove, interior offensive lineman, to the Rams. Alrighty, fellas, we have made it the final 7 picks of the day. Broncos at 253 get Patrick Johnson, edge rusher. Isaiah Loudermilk, interior defensive lineman to the Steelers. Brian Mills, cornerback NC Central to the Saints. That's good value for him. Amen Ogbongbemiga to the Packers. Zach Thomas, quarterback Appalachian State to the Browns. That's an interesting one. Myron Tagovailoa Amosa, interior defensive lineman to the Dolphins. He is related to Tua, for what it's worth. And then Mr. Irrelevant, actually an interesting player. Foster Sarrell, offensive tackle out of Stanford, once a really highly regarded recruit, has fallen down the board, but he still happens to get drafted by the Bucs. That'll do it for our 7-round mock draft. We somehow managed to stay pretty much right at an hour. I did not think I'd be able to get through it this quickly, but I hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. Still plenty of draft content the final few days before the event itself. I'm out. Peace.